أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم اللعين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين اللهم صل على فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We begin in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. We give all thanks to the Almighty Allah, Lord of the universe. And we send Allah's salutations to His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Once again, it is a privilege to be here today to join the community of the lovers and followers of the household of the Prophet to share some words with all of you on this special occasion of the birth of the holy daughter of the Prophet, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. First of all, let me congratulate all of us on this special occasion. As we know, the Prophet is a human being who is not like other human beings. The same way, his daughter, Fatima Zahra, is a woman who is not like any other woman. She is indeed the best of daughters because she has the best of fathers. She is indeed the best of wives because she has the best of husbands. She is indeed the best of mothers because she has the best of children. We are here today to celebrate this woman and to share some few words on her personality, particularly the role she played in empowering women. And so I'm here to talk on the topic Fatima Zahra alayha salam, or Lady Fatima, a timeless voice of women empowerment. But to contextualize this topic and to give us a proper understanding of the role she played, I want to take us to the Quran and look at the role the Quran assigned to women and the role women played as far as the history of religion and Islam in particular is concerned. When we go to Surah Al-Nisa, that is Quran chapter 3, the first verse, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, the Almighty Allah addresses the entirety of mankind. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. This verse addresses the entirety of mankind. O humankind, be conscious of your Lord who created you from a single soul and created from it its mate and dispersed from both of them many men and women. This verse lays a foundation for both men and women to appreciate their shared origin, that we are all from one source. And what this means is that we have a common essence as men and women. We have a common dignity. We have the same spiritual potential. There is no superiority when it comes to the spiritual role of men and women. We share the same potential. The verse tells us that we are mutually dependent. We depend on each other. Men and women are to complement each other and to help in building society. There is no superiority at all as far as the Quran is concerned. the Quran also talks about the equal participation in the history of mankind, that both men and women play a role in civilization, in society, in families, and in building the entirety of mankind. So we all contribute to the continuity of the development of the human race, and therefore women have a special role to play as far as the development of humanity is concerned. Now, the import of this verse is that we all have a shared social responsibility, and we all have to contribute in ensuring social justice, fairness, the protection of human dignity, human rights, and rejection of oppression and discrimination. And to exemplify this role that the Almighty Allah plays on all of us as human beings, the Almighty Allah in Surah Al-Tahrim, Quran chapter 62, verses 10 to 12, specifically mention women who have played important roles in the history of mankind, the good and the bad. And the Almighty Allah mentions their name for us to reflect and know that women can equally make things happen in society. Women can make history. Women can build society, and indeed, women build society. And women also played roles in destroying society, and the Almighty Allah dealt with them severely as He dealt with men who did same. In these verses, verse 10, the Almighty Allah gave an example of women who deviated from the command of Allah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط كانتا تحت عبدين من عبادنا الصالحين فخانتاهما فلم يغنيا عنهما من الله شيئا وقيل ادخلا النار مع الداخلين. This verse talks about the role of the wives of Prophet Noah and Prophet Lot. When their husbands were calling people to the oneness of God, when their husbands were calling people to righteousness, they were rather promoting social vices. They were rather promoting injustice. They were promoting destruction of society. And the Almighty Allah specifically mentions them to serve as a lesson. This tells us that women have the potential to do or undo, to make or unmake society. And indeed, these people, these women in particular, played bad or negative roles in the lives of their husbands, in the missions that their husbands brought to promote on earth. And the Almighty Allah dealt with them and said they would enter hellfire with all those who played negative roles, and then God will judge them accordingly. Then the Almighty Allah mentions other two women who played beautiful roles, who played positive roles, good roles in their societies, in the development of society. God says, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا امْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ, in the same verse, chapter, verse 11, that is Surah Al-Tahrim. ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا امْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ, that God is citing an example of the women who believed. And then He mentions the wife of Fir'aun, Asiya, that she was under an oppressive leader, oppressive husband, an unjust husband, Fir'aun. But she was a believing woman, and she was able to propagate good and virtuous lifestyle in her society. She was able to nurture a baby to become a prophet in the house of an oppressor, in the house where male children were killed for fear of growing to challenge the power of the Pharaoh. But this believing woman stood against her husband and was able to protect a prophet of God. The Almighty Allah is citing her as an example for all of us to know that women have what it takes to construct society. Then the Almighty Allah continues to give us an example of another virtuous woman. وَمَرْيَمَ ابْنَةَ إِمْرَانَ الَّتِي أَحْسَنَتْ فَرْجَهَا فَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِنَا وَصَدَّقَتْ بِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّهَا وَكُتُبِهِ وَكَانَتْ مِنَ الْقَانِتِينَ. The Almighty Allah is citing an example of Maryam, Mary, the daughter of Imran, who was a virtuous woman in the society, in a society where vices became common, in a society where oppression, in a society where transgression became the order of the day. She stood out as a different woman. She stood out as a woman who wanted to save the nation, who wanted to be the laboratory in which a prophet would be produced. And indeed, based on her virtuous lifestyle, the Almighty Allah made it possible for her to carry Prophet Jesus, Prophet Isa alayhi salam. And indeed, the story of Sayyidah Maryam is a lesson for all of us to learn. And so, when you take these verses, verse 1 of Surah An-Nisa and verses 10, 11, 12 of Surah At-Tahrim, the conclusion is that men and women are on equal footing as far as spirituality is concerned. The Almighty endowed all of us the same capacity to be able to rise to the highest level that we can attain in spirituality. And for that matter, in translating that spirituality to social life. So this is the background of the discussion we are having today, so that we put the role of Sayyidah Zahra in proper context, because many have the understanding that women are of low rank as far as spirituality is concerned. Many have the understanding that in the history of Islam, there hasn't been, or in the history of mankind, there hasn't been a female prophet or messenger sent to mankind, and therefore woman cannot rise spiritually. But the examples we have cited, especially Sayyidah Asiya, Sayyidah Maryam, the Almighty demonstrated clearly that these women were indeed messengers in their own context, because they were able to salvage a certain situation. They were able to change a certain narrative, and they brought positivity in their communities. And that can still happen today, and that is still happening today. And Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam exemplified all the roles that these women played, because her father is the seal of prophethood. So all the roles that the prophet came to play, her father came to perfect those roles. And therefore, she also came to perfect the roles that the believing women played in the past, and the roles that believing women are supposed to emulate going forward. Sayyidah Fatima was born in a particular socio-cultural context, and that is what makes her story so unique. In a community where women have a voice, her role wouldn't be anything special. After all, many women are doing it, so she doing it wouldn't be a story. But in a situation where women are not even given the opportunity to live at all, then she has the opportunity to live and lead a life that becomes worthy of emulation. Indeed, this is a story that we need to echo and re-echo it every now and then. Say that Fatima was born in a context that did not welcome the female child at all. As we are told, Arabia practiced the most barbaric cultural things that you can think of, to the extent that the news of the birth of a female child was the most disgraceful thing that a father could ever receive. Parents buried their daughters alive out of shame because they could not stand the mockery of their members, their fellow men in the society. One poet tells us that fathers had a certain mindset. And then this poet is saying that it is better to bury women and dragons in the earth. In fact, they are comparing women and animals, that it is better to bury women and dragons in the earth, and that the world would be better off if cleansed of their existence. Just as the dragon is a wild animal that makes life uncomfortable to human beings, so the presence of the dragon makes life unbearable for the human being. The same is the presence of a daughter to a father. So the family becomes better off, the society becomes better off if the daughter is buried alive. That when a girl was born, the father's first thinking would be to have 3 sons-in-law. The first son-in-law is hiding her in the room so that the news wouldn't go out, the girl wouldn't go out for anyone to see her. So the room becomes a son-in-law where the girl is kept away from society. The second son-in-law is whose son would actually come forward for this girl. So the father is worried, thinking about this. Then the third son-in-law is to bury this girl. The grave is described as a son-in-law. So the daughter is given to the ground to swallow her. And this is a way of dealing with shame in society. And the poet is saying that the best son-in-law for fathers at the time was the grave. So once you are able to bury your daughter, you have actually found the best son-in-law. This is the background of the community in which Sayyidah Fatima was born. So it tells you that for a daughter to grow and even become a wife was indeed an achievement. For a daughter to grow and become a mother was a greater achievement. And for a daughter to grow, become a mother, become a teacher, and become a role model, this is indeed the greatest achievement that someone in Arabia could have, that any father at all in Arabia could have. Take Islam away, take religion away. For any father in Arabia at that time to have his daughter grow, get a husband to marry, give birth, and then have a voice in that society was indeed the greatest achievement. And so few women had that opportunity. And in the culture of the Arabs, those women were covering their faces. The niqab we have today in Islam. In fact, it was part of the Jahiliyyah practices. Those women who were seen to have achieved something greater because they were not buried alive, because they were allowed to grow and they got husbands, they became mothers, and some even became traders, they would now have to be protected by these Arabs. They thought that these people had indeed achieved so much. These women achieved so much that we needed to protect them. So that is what they were doing. They would cover their faces so that other men would not see them. So it was an achievement in those days to get this far. And so that is why the Quran tells us that وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. That if any of them receive the news of a female child, then his face darkens and he is filled with inward grief. It was indeed grievous to have a daughter. So the Almighty wanted to change the narrative. And the best way to change this narrative was to use the very person sent to the entirety of mankind to serve as an example to all the men in that society and in the universe as a whole. So the prophet, we are told, had some children, daughters and 2 sons. And the Almighty, in his infinite wisdom, did not allow these children to survive for long, especially the 2 sons or the son, because the Almighty wanted to test the society and see their reaction. And indeed, they displayed their Jahiliyyah way of doing things when this happened to the Prophet. What did they do? They mocked the Prophet. Jahiliyyah champions like As bin Wa'il, like Walid bin Mughira, and the likes mocked the Prophet. They said the Prophet is indeed al-abtar. The Prophet is cut off. The Prophet is without offsprings. The Prophet is without a son to inherit him, because daughters were part of the properties to be inherited. And so if you left a daughter behind, what it means is that that daughter automatically would become part of your property that others would inherit from you. So the Prophet was seen as someone who didn't have a future. And the Almighty Allah said to the Prophet, we have given you abundance of wealth, abundance of goodness that would continue your seed, that would continue your legacy, such that you would have your offsprings from that Al-Kawthar, from that abundance of gift that we have given you. And this was indeed comforting to the Prophet and to those around him to know that the female child is indeed useful. The female child is indeed important. The female child is indeed an asset worthy of celebration. The Prophet did not just keep Fatima to himself just to protect her in the house, but the Prophet displayed her to the whole world. The Prophet expressed his love for her openly. The Prophet expressed his protection for her openly. The Prophet dignified her openly, not because of his biological relationship with her, but also because of the spiritual connection with her, because of the spiritual role she occupies, and the lesson therein for all of us. The Prophet used to call her the mother of her father, Abiha. That Fatima is indeed the mother of her father. And this was because Fatima showed exceptional care for the Prophet. There were instances where the Prophet would be insulted by the disbelievers. The Prophet would be harmed by the Prophet, and Fatima would be the one to come closer and talk to the Prophet, comfort him, and in some cases, in fact, clean his body when he was hurt in one way or the other, or when something dirty touched his body. She will be the one to clean him and then give him assurance that, look, I am behind you. I am your only surviving child, and I completely support you. So whatever you are doing, I am not afraid. In fact, every daughter would be afraid that all eyes are on her father and would want to plead with the father to withdraw. But this was a daughter giving hope to the father, giving assurance to the father that I am solidly behind you. Continue to do whatever you are doing, and I will grow to emulate all the things that you are doing. Her spiritual closeness to the Prophet was unmatched. Anytime she appeared in the midst of the Prophet, where he would be sitting with his companions, the Prophet would get up and allow her to sit, just to demonstrate that this is not just any ordinary daughter you are seeing. She is indeed a daughter physically, she is indeed a daughter spiritually. But beyond that, she is also a role model to all girls, to all daughters, so that you will learn to respect your daughters. There are a number of traditions talking about the virtues of the Prophet's daughter Fatima alayhi salam that we cannot mention all. The few of them is, the Prophet said, Fatima is a part of me. Whoever harms her has harmed me. That Fatima tu bada'atun minni. Fatima is a part of me. So if you want to please the Prophet, please Fatima. If you want to annoy the Prophet, annoy Fatima. The pleasure of Fatima is indeed the pleasure of Prophet, and the anger of Fatima is the anger of the Almighty Allah, and the anger of the Almighty, the Prophet is the anger of the Almighty Allah. In another tradition, the Prophet said, Fatima is the leader of the women of paradise. She has a position in this world, and that position will reflect in paradise. So if you want to be among those women in paradise, emulate Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam. The Prophet said, Fatima is the most similar to me in speech, conduct, and manner. That if you want to see someone who resembles me so much, then look at Fatima. And we know the conduct of the Prophet, as his wife Sayyidah Aisha said, the Prophet's conduct is Quran. She said, Hulukuhu al-Quran. That if you want to know how the Prophet conducted himself, just look at the Quran. And the Prophet is saying the most similar to him in conduct is Sayyidah Fatima. What it means is that Sayyidah Fatima is indeed an embodiment of the Quran. When you study her lifestyle, when you emulate her, you are indeed practicalizing the teachings of the Quran. These are some of the virtues of Sayyidah Fatima. And like I said, these traditions are in reference to Sayyidah Fatima. But beyond that, the message is that the girl child is an invaluable asset. who deserves the highest level of respect and protection. That is the message the Prophet is teaching us here. He is using his own daughter to teach us the role of women in society. He is using his own daughter to teach us the dignity of women in society. He's using his own daughter to teach us that women can indeed change the narrative of society. And that is the lesson we should all learn from these stories that we listen to. We now come to the timeless, empowering legacies of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. As the daughter of the Prophet, she saw it all. Revelation came in her house. Islam started in her house. And so she grew in the house of spirituality. So the first legacy of Sayyidah Fatima that is empowering women and all of us, all times, is her spiritual role. So the spiritual empowerment of Sayyidah Fatima is rooted in her understanding that true empowerment begins with the heart. In fact, she did not relax as a daughter of the Prophet to say, my father is there, my father is teaching, so I wouldn't learn. My father has a position in the sight of God, so I wouldn't also make effort. She was devoted to worship. She would spend her night worshiping Allah. She would spend her day doing the usual socio-cultural, socio-economic roles that a family woman would do. So spiritually, Sayyidah Fatima was so much devoted to her Lord. Her nights were filled with prayer. And in fact, she didn't only pray for herself. She would pray for others. She has a culture of praying for others. And that is one lesson we learn, that if you want the Almighty Allah to listen to you faster, don't be selfish in your prayers. Pray for others as well. So when she was asked, why do you always pray for others? She said, the neighbor first, then the house. That you should cater for your neighbor spiritually. So when you are praying, remember to pray for your neighbor before you even pray for yourself. That is one of the important legacies of Sayyidah Fatima. In fact, the highest point of her spirituality is her immunity, her isma. The Almighty Allah protected her from all impurities. And in Surah Al-Ahzab, Quran chapter 33, verse 33, the Quran says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Sayyidah Fatima was the only woman given this unique spiritual position. In the story of Ashab al-Kisa, when the Prophet covered them with a cloak, the Prophet, Sayyid Ali, Sayyid Hassan, Sayyid Hussein, then Sayyidah Fatima. 5 people under this cloak that the Almighty Allah revealed this verse in their honor to tell all of us that these are infallible figures. They are infallible role models that you follow them wholeheartedly, 100% without any fault. And once you emulate them 100%, you can be guaranteed of the highest position of purity as well. So that is the highest position of her spirituality. She was infallible. The lesson is for contemporary women navigating busy lives. Sayyidah Fatima teaches you that spirituality is not separate from daily life. She did not separate spirituality from daily responsibilities. She taught us that indeed spirituality is what gives meaning and direction and resilience to life. So when you want to have a better life, don't decouple spirituality from your normal life. Make time on daily basis to pray to your Lord. Make time on daily basis to observe your askar. Make time on daily basis to recite some verses of the Quran, to send salawat to the Prophet and his household. And once you do this, you would have been indeed emulating Sayyidah Fatima. And that legacy will resonate with your entire life. Sayyidah Fatima has another important everlasting legacy. That is the voice for justice and human dignity. She stood as a voice for the voiceless in society. She did that during her father's lifetime, when she would appear and the father would accord her all the respect. But even after the father passed on, she now took up the responsibility of speaking for the voiceless. And she was among the voiceless because she was rendered voiceless. But she said, no, I wouldn't allow that to happen. She was oppressed and she said, no, I will not accept it. Because when you accept oppression, you are endorsing it, and you would do that in such a way that others would also suffer similar consequences. So she stood against oppression. She spoke to the authorities at the time. And this was in particular reference to the confiscation of a property that belonged to her father, that she was the only surviving child of the father to inherit, the fadak. It's a long story that we wouldn't want to go in. But when this property was confiscated from her, she stood against the authority, the caliphate at the time. She said, what is your basis? They said, the prophet said, we the prophets are not inherited. Nobody is to inherit us. But she said, if the prophet said this, what about the verse of the Quran that tells us about prophets inheriting their fathers? The Quran tells us Prophet Sulaiman inherited his father Dawood. Prophet Ismail inherited his father Ibrahim. A lot of prophets inherited their father. Ishaq, Yaqub, Yusuf. These are all prophets, and their children also became prophets. So in terms of spirituality, there is that inheritance. In terms of property, there is that inheritance. And so why are you denying me my right? She spoke against it, and she delivered a brilliant khutbah on this. That is known as the Khutbatul Fadakiyah. Sayyidah Fatima did this to teach women of today that empowerment is not rebellion. It's not about being rebellion, but it is about standing stronger for justice, even when you are the only one talking. Let your voice be heard, even if you are alone. Once you know you are defending the right cause, go ahead to defend that right cause without fear or favor. Even if your rights are not granted at that moment, others would benefit from that struggle that you have engaged in. Sayyidah Fatima also empowered us through knowledge. She grew, as I said, from the house of prophethood, but she also learned. She was a transmitter of ahadith. She related a number of traditions, and she taught her children Hassan, Hussein, Lady Zainab. She taught all of them and nurtured them to become better scholars, to become better teachers as well. And we saw this in their lifestyle. So today, as a woman, Sayyidah Zahra is teaching us that you have a role to play in learning. You must empower yourself through learning, because an empowered woman is an educated woman. If you are not educated, then the level of empowerment will be very minimal, no matter how smart you are. So today, let's emulate her life. Let's educate our children. Let's educate our daughters. But as women, let's also take up the responsibility of learning so that we don't relax, as she did not relax in spite of being the daughter of the Prophet. I know today many ladies would relax once their parents are occupying bigger positions, but she never relaxed. She took it upon herself as a responsibility to learn, and indeed she learned and imparted that knowledge. Sayyidah Zahra also empowered all of us, not only women, through compassion and service to mankind. She demonstrated good leadership. She demonstrated compassion to the weak. She nurtured the poor. She supported the oppressed and opened her home to anyone who needed comfort. In fact, she was not affluent. She was not rich, but she shared the little she had. She showed compassion to those who needed her support. And it was in this regard that Quran chapter 76 verses 8 to 9 were revealed in her honor and that of her husband, Imam Ali alayhi salam. The Quran, the verse says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وعسيرا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. In fact, this verse was revealed in her honor because she and the husband took a vow with the Almighty Allah to fast for 3 days because of the circumstances they found themselves in relation to the health of their children. They fasted. The little they had to break their fast, first day, the first person came, miskin came, begging. They gave the little they had to him. The second day came, they fasted. The little they had to break their fast, an orphan came, they gave whatever they had. Then the third day, they were about to break their fast. Another person came in need, and then they gave all to these people. They supported them. And all they did was, إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ, that we feed you for the sake of Allah. We don't expect any reward. We don't expect any thanks. If you thank us, that is up to you, but we are not expecting any reward from you. So this is indeed the highest level of compassion you can think of, that you have fasted, and the little you have to break your fast to regain your energy, you are now denying yourself that in order to serve someone who is in need. Today, we should learn from her to also be in a position to help others. In fact, she demonstrated that empowerment is the ability to lift others. It is not for you to be at the top and think you are enjoying. That is not empowerment. If you do that, you are not empowering anyone. In fact, you are not empowered. It means you are still hungry, you are still in need. If you can't give, then it means you are not satisfied yet. If you can deny yourself the little and give to those who are in need more than you, then that is the highest point of satisfaction. So empowerment today should be for us to lift one another, to bring mercy, to bring peace, kindness to others, and to transform society through acts of goodness. Then Sayyidah Fatima also played another important role of empowerment by being, in fact, a balance. She was able to balance multiple roles, and she did that with excellence. She played a lot of roles. As I mentioned in the introduction, a daughter, the best daughter, best mother, best wife, and best teacher, best leader. So she played this important role, and her role, in fact, Sayyidah Fatima has been part and parcel of the spread of Islam, of the formation of the Islamic community. So when you go to Quran chapter 3, Surah Al-Imran, verse 61, the Almighty Allah gives us an interesting story. It's a command given to the Prophet should that situation arise. There is a condition. So the Christians of Najran challenged the Prophet in so many ways, and the challenge got to a point where there was the need to now invoke curses of Allah on whoever is lying, because it wasn't about fighting physically, but this is an intellectual battle. So the Prophet brought a message, they denied, and went ahead to make certain allegations. And when the Prophet tried persuading them, they would never listen. So finally, the challenge got to a point where they needed to now do mubahala. They needed to invoke curses on whoever is telling truth or telling false. The Quran says, فَمَنْ هَاجَكَ فِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا نَدْعُ أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ ثُمَّ نَبْتَهِلْ فَنَجْعَلْ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَاذِبِينَ. This is an open challenge to the Prophet and to all Muslims, and in fact to Islam as an institution, that these people are challenging you. You've said this, they refuse. So the Quran says, if anyone disputes in this matter with you, now after full knowledge hath come to thee, say, come, let us gather together, our sons and your sons, our women and your women, ourselves and yourselves. Then let us earnestly pray and invoke the curse of Allah on those who lie. This is a very strong message to the Prophet that is to demonstrate the truth that he is propagating. But it is not just about demonstrating the truth of the message, but the challenge is to now involve himself, so that in case he is not telling the truth, in case there is something wrong, there is a parochial motive or interest in this message, then everyone would see that this prophet is just doing something for his personal gains. So he threw the challenge to the people, and challenge accepted. They started it. Then the verse came that, look, accept the challenge. If they continue, then tell them, okay, come, let's do this invocation. And the interesting thing is, they gave their criteria, those that are supposed to participate in this. Our children, your children. Our women, your women. Ourselves, yourselves. So the Prophet said, fine, let's go on. So the day of Mubahala was due. Then the Prophet brought his two grandsons, Hassan and Hussein, to represent all children of Islamdom. Then he brought Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam to represent all women. And then Imam Ali and the Prophet himself to represent the selves in this passage. But the interesting thing is, the Christians withdrew from this exercise because they knew the implication. Seeing the Prophet, his biological daughter, his beloved daughter, her children, her husband. So it is now the Prophet and his daughter, her children, her husband, connected. So one unit coming out openly to defend Islam. So Sayyidah Fatima was the only woman there representing all women. So today, the women of Islam, I'm telling you that Sayyidah Fatima represented you long ago to save this religion for you to witness it today and practice it with the comfort that you are practicing the religion today. This is a great legacy. It tells you that you have a role to play in building the Muslim society today. And it is good we see a lot of Muslim women doing a lot of things today positively to shape society. We continue to encourage them to do what they are doing and to improve on that. So Sayyidah Fatima was at the forefront of saving the religion from day one. So as a mother, she was the best of mothers. She nurtured her children to become the best. In fact, the children of Sayyidah Fatima didn't enjoy that luxury. Like I said, today, if I have my father being the president of the republic, I would have perhaps personal expectations of my father because I would want to enjoy certain lifestyle. But she was very modest. And so she trained her children to also be modest so that they wouldn't say, oh, our grandfather is the prophet, so let's enjoy, let's misbehave. No, they were very modest. They were very moderate in their dealings. She was a supportive partner. Imam Ali was not affluent, even though if he wanted to be rich, he could have been. Just as the prophet decided not to also be materialistic. They were not materialistic. So she supported him in all times. She was an eloquent advocate of justice. She combined that. She was a wise community figure. In fact, anywhere you saw her, you saw wisdom. Anywhere you saw her, you saw justice moving. And she was a devoted worshipper. Sayyidah Fatima combined all these roles as a woman, as daughter of the Prophet, as wife of Imam Ali, as mother to her children. What does this tell us today? It tells us that as contemporary women, we are faced with so many pressures today. Okay, the pressure of everyday life, everyday socio-economic issues. We have social expectations, we have economic demands, cultural stereotypes. In fact, she faced the same thing. Economic demands. There were times she needed something even to cater for her children, and it was difficult for her. But she would go out, do the little she could do legally to get whatever she would get to come and feed her family. There were times she was looked down upon. In fact, the whole idea of denying her fadak was a kind of revisiting the Jahiliyyah practice where women were not given inheritance. But in all these stereotypes, these challenges, she was able to rise to the occasion. So today, as you struggle with these stereotypes, especially in this modern era where social media, where the digital space is now influencing our lives, women are supposed to go back to the legacies of Sayyidah Fatima and learn that she has given us a framework, a timeless framework for empowerment through spiritual grounding in the world of moral confusion. Sayyidah Fatima has given us this. The world is in total moral confusion today. Which lifestyle do you want to adopt for yourself? There is that moral confusion. But Sayyidah Fatima is telling you, adopt a spiritual lifestyle, and that will make things easy for you. That will charter a clearer path for you. We are today in a world of compromise, where if you are a girl, you want to seek for a job, you are asked to meet certain expectations. Sometimes you are asked to give yourself before you are given a job. Sayyidah Fatima is teaching you to keep your integrity, your dignity, no matter the circumstance. She did that, and she's telling you you can do it. We are in a world today that sometimes reward silence. She is telling you, be courageous, be bold, and speak the truth. But at the same time, be polite, be respectful. She spoke the truth, but she was never arrogant. She was never aggressive. She was never rebellious. We are in a world of misinformation. Sayyidah Fatima taught us to seek true knowledge, genuine knowledge, and you can seek that through reading her biography, how she learned, how she taught. We are in a world of self-interest today. Everyone is pursuing their personal interests. Sayyidah Fatima taught us to be compassionate, to be kind, to be merciful to all those that need our support. So to the woman today, these are the takeaway for you: spiritual integrity, moral integrity, courage, knowledge, compassion, and many more that we can learn from Sayyidah Fatima. Whether you are a mother, whether you are a wife, whether you are a daughter, whether you are a worker, a Muslim, a female Muslim working under someone or leading people, Sayyidah Fatima's lifestyle has a lot to offer you. We pray to the Almighty Allah to guide us and to give us the courage to be able to learn from the lifestyle of Sayyidah Fatima and to practicalize her examples in our life. We pray as we celebrate her birth during this period, the blessings therein, we pray to the Almighty Allah to grant us. And once again, we thank Allah for giving us this opportunity to share the life story of Sayyidah Fatima with all of you. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.